Hey everyone, it's Eugene here, and welcome to another video. Today what I'm going to be doing is working inside of FARO Zone 3D, and this is the new version. So it's the Expert version. There is now an Expert and an Expert Plus, and we're going to be working with bullet trajectories. So I have a laser scan that I've just simulated with a couple of trajectories, and we're going to bring those in. We're going to mark the trajectories and then just kind of work through the process of aligning the point cloud data how you want, and then, making sure that the bullet trajectories are all aligned. So what we're going to do is start with bringing in a point cloud. Now I've got, FARO Zone 3D that's already launched. Now, if you're new to FARO Zone 3D, there's a couple of little things that we can go through here, but basically the navigation, I've got it so that my right mouse button is rotating around here on the screen. The scroll button on the mouse will zoom in and out. And if you want to pan, you need to hold down the scroll wheel. Okay, you need to press it down and then you can pan like left and right, that sort of thing. Now, there are some settings that I've changed on my computer just to make it easier for navigation. I just find it a little bit easier. And those are in the settings. So if you come up here in preferences, you click on that. And over here, you can see there's some things here, general display performance and stuff like that. So I'm clicking on this scene navigation mode by default. So if you don't have that checked, I found for a lot of people, it's a little bit easier to work in this particular mode. And especially if you're using FARO Scene already, it will provide you a similar way of navigating. Okay, so let's skip over that one right now. Or if you haven't set that, you can go ahead and do that. So the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to be importing a point cloud. But I do want to say that you do not need a point cloud in order to mark trajectories. So you could create a wall, you could do a number of different things, and then just do the trajectories that way without having, a scan of a trajectory rod or whatever. You can place the bullet trajectories anywhere. And so, for example, a situation or a scenario might be where you have a bullet impact through glass, and then it hits a concrete wall or something like that. At none of those 2 points would you actually place a trajectory rod because there's not enough material to support the trajectory rod itself. So you basically have 2 impact points, and you just want to connect one with the other and then look at the, sort of the linear path of travel of that bullet. So what we're going to do, though, is go right into a point cloud. So you're going to want to start up here in the point cloud tab, right? So I'm going to click on that. And then there's some options across the top here, and we'll go through some of them. But the first one here says import. So if you click on the little arrow here, okay, the first one is import scene project point cloud, and the next one is import other point clouds. So now I'm going to use the other point clouds today because I've exported an E57 file from FARO Scene. But if you had a project point cloud that was already created inside of FARO Zone, inside of FARO Scene, you can already just import it. So it'll recognize the project file and then bring it in. So let's go ahead and do the import other point clouds, and this window pops up. Now, if you have an old version of FARO Zone 3D, you won't get this, okay? It was a different import process, but here we have a couple of options, okay? So the first one is you can convert it to an LSPROJ. So that's a scene project file. So it's a laser scanner project file, or the other one is a FARO Zone point cloud, an FCPC. Now, the LSPROJ makes a complete folder. So it's a folder with the laser scanner structure and things like that, or you can go with a single conversion. So it'll take the whatever file format you bring in. So let's say it's an E57 format. It'll then convert it just to a single FARO Zone point cloud, and it'll do it in the same directory that your scan was originally located. So I'm going to bring in this point cloud that I've got. So I've got this little ... over here. And what I'm going to do is click on that. And I'm just going to go to my desktop. And I've got this trajectory with sphere E57 file. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. This was in meters. So I'm going to click OK. All right. Now you see it automatically went back to this LSPRJ. So make sure you click on FCPC. And like I said, either would work. It's not a problem. So, you can do one or the other. I'm just going to work with a single file for now. So I need to click on the start button. And what this is going to do is chew through that E57 file and then convert it into FARO Zone's native format, which is the FCPC. And FCPC was, like I said, what was there before in the past. But we need to go through this process because it won't just natively open an E57 file. So I'll just hang on here, and once this is done, we'll pop right back. Okay, I pressed pause, but like just a couple of seconds later, it popped up. So you can see here, I've got my point cloud. So I'm just going to scroll in here and just have a little look. Okay, so I'm just using the mouse wheel. I'll drag this around and then I'll just rotate around. Okay, like this. Just one thing on the navigation. If you take your mouse and you scroll over the middle here, there's this little circle that pops up. Now, if you right click and rotate around this, you'll see that the navigation is different. Okay, so it's not really rotating around the object, it's rotating around you, the user, outside of the screen almost. So I try to avoid clicking on here because I usually want to just click and rotate the object like this. Okay, something like that. So that's what I'm going to work with right now. The point cloud itself looks pretty good. You can see that I have a roof on this. Okay, so it's going to cause me a problem because I want to get inside and I want to look around, and you know, I may want to look at the trajectories. And if I want to navigate to the trajectories, okay, they're up here on this door. I'm just going to scroll a little bit more. Oops, let me go there. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky. Okay, because I'm pointed upwards. There we go. We're getting there. All right, so you can see inside of Zone, sometimes if you have to get inside a room, it's a little bit tricky. So that's why we're going to make some little changes. So there's a couple of trajectories here on this wall. Okay, just like here. There's one there. There's one there. Let me see if I can get in through the wall again. There we go. Okay, so there's one there and there's one there. And so we're going to mark these and create something. But because I'm going to be working with this point cloud, I don't want to be, you know, bouncing through the walls every time and trying to cut through. So we're going to do a couple of things. One is we're going to reorient this point cloud, and then we're going to cut off the ceiling with a clip box, and we'll be able to see, you know, from the top down inside. So if I click on this, there's a little view cube in the top right here. If I click on this, okay, I can get to the top right, or excuse me, a top-down view, but I can also get to these perspective views just by clicking on the corners, just like that and like that. And what you'll notice is if I click on the top, I'm in an orthographic view now, but you'll see that my point cloud really isn't aligned with anything, okay? So it's a little bit on an angle. So that's one thing you may want to do with your point cloud if it isn't aligned already. And that is, I may want to take one wall and call that my north wall or my east wall or something like that. So I'm going to do that in this case, okay? I'm going to align it, and I'm going to use the point cloud tools to do that, okay? So I'll show you how that works. So I know that this wall back here, okay, it's this section right here is a north wall. So maybe what I'll do is I'll have this wall facing up, and you can see that, you know, I've got an angle on this room. It's kind of a weird shape, but I'm going to use, you know, this here as maybe what I want to align to. I could also use the door because the trajectories were on the door. So if I get into a perspective view, I'll click on that and I'll move in, see what I got. And you'll see that the trajectories are on the door. So sometimes, oh, there we go. Yeah, so zooming is a little tricky here because it starts to max out on the zoom. But here you go. I got this here. So I could also use the door as, you know, sort of the horizontal or the north section. But let's say I'm just going to use this wall to align the point cloud. Okay, we'll just do it that way. So I'm going to go back to the top-down view, have a look, straighten this out. And there's a couple of other things too I want to do, and that is that if you'll notice that if I look at the point cloud, I've got my grid going through the middle of the point cloud. So I want to align that as well. I want to make some changes here. And I may even want to align a corner of this, maybe the bottom corner down here, let's say somewhere down here, as my 0, 0, 0. Okay, so we're going to do that, and we're going to be using the point cloud tool. So in the point cloud tab, if you go to the third one over from the left, it says Point Cloud Tools. I'm going to click on that. So this brings up some properties with respect to this particular point cloud. It's got the point size. It's got, you know, flip your Z. You can flip this upside down and things like that. But the one that we want is Cloud Positioning Tools. So I'm going to click on this and expand, and it gives me some options for reorienting and translating the point cloud. So I've got XYZ, which means I can translate it, and I also have yaw, pitch, and roll, and that means that I can roll it or rotate it. Now, because this is a scan that came from a laser scanner, a terrestrial laser scanner, I'm confident that it's aligned properly in the Z-axis, the up and down. So my bigger concern here is, you know, how is it oriented in the direction, sort of the around the vertical axis, which way is it pointing? And that's the way that I'm going to get my north. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that point in this bottom corner here, and I'll get in close, I'll show you. And this is going to be my 0, 0, 0 right over here. So, you know, if you were mapping a scene or something and you were doing things by hand, maybe this point would be your 0, 0, 0. So there's a couple of options here. One is elevate to pick point. And if I click on this and click on any point in the scan, it'll take the Z value. So I have, you know, X, Y, Z coordinates. It'll take that Z value and it'll zero it. So that means that if it's below the grid, it'll lift it up. If it's above the grid, it'll bring it back down to the 0 point. Okay. But the other one that I want is center to pick point X, Y, Z. So I'm going to click on that, and this point will now be the 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to click on that. Okay. And if I look here where my crosshairs are, so this way and this way, this point has now become right on the grid at 0, 0, 0. So that's usually what I do to get it there. But you can see if I click on the top view here, it's still kind of angled. It's not where I want it. Okay, so I need to do some orientation here to the scan. And the one that I want to choose is the yaw. Now there's buttons on either side of this 0 here, okay, where I can enter a value. So the ones on the left, these little arrows here that go up and down, they make large jumps, okay, so 45 degrees or 90 degrees. So if I click on this, you'll see that it makes a really big jump. But if I want to go in finer increments, okay, I need to click on these little ones, and you can see I can rotate these around. So that's kind of what I'm after. And I'm just going to do this roughly, get it aligned in the view. Often what I do as a little trick is I will take the scan here. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to see how well it aligns with my top line here. And I can see that there's still a little bit of a bend here. Okay, a little bit of an angle. So I may want to click this once more, and then, okay, so it's not perfect. Now this side seems a little bit lower than this one. So I could kind of, let's see, I'm at 340, I'm at 341. So if I went to 340.5, okay, like that. Now I got a pretty good balance there. That's pretty good. Okay, now you can get in, you can really adjust this with a lot of precision and do whatever, but I think for what I'm doing right now, that's fine. Okay, so I've just basically had this wall here, which is my north wall, pointing up and down. Now I'm just going to rotate around again and see what this looks like. Okay, there we go. Now, by doing that, or in the process of rotating, I've shifted, okay, my point here. So this is the 0, 0, 0 is somewhere over here behind this wall. I want to move this back. So all I need to do is go center to pick point. Okay, I'm going to get him really close. Make sure that you pick. And again, I'm doing this a little quick for the tutorial, but you know, you want to get in close and then, you know, just make sure that it's as accurate as you can get it. So if I look now, okay, that looks pretty good. And you can see that this wall here along the axis right over here is aligned pretty well. Okay, so I got a pretty good alignment. I could adjust this a little bit more, but for the purposes of what we're doing, I think you get the idea and it looks pretty good. Okay, so the alignment of the point cloud is done. Next, what we want to do is we want to get rid of this ceiling here, because it's going to block our view and it's going to make it more tricky to navigate every time we want to jump inside of the point cloud. So the way that we do that is with a clip box. And over here, still in the point cloud tab, if you go across, you got this box with a plus and you have this clip box manager. So we're going to use these two, but we're going to start with this add box. And I'll walk you through what you need to do here, but it's a pretty simple process. And we're going to draw a rectangle. So let's go ahead and go like this. I'm going to get into a view where I can kind of get a perspective view, but something like this. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to add a clip box, and I'm going to click on one side here. I'm just going to follow this line, and it helps that I've aligned the point cloud. Okay, so I've got this line, and I'm going to click down on here, and now I'm going to drag, and I'm making a rectangle like that. I'm going to click to encompass the point cloud, and then I'm going to click again, and now you see I've got this box here that's going up and down. Okay, so, and right now it's a little bit difficult to adjust because I'm all over the place, but I'm just going to click it in place. And you'll see that I have this box that's now around the point cloud, just like that. So this clip box, what it's going to do is it's going to hide things that are either inside or outside of the box. So what I'm going to do is just have a look here at the bottom. Okay, so I've got some things that are there, and you know, I can still see the point cloud. But if I just take one of these controllers, these are scaling controllers on the side, and I drag this way, like that, you'll see that it starts to hide the point cloud, and I can actually look inside the room just like that. So we're going to make this box such that it really just cuts off the ceiling, because that's really all I'm interested in. So I'm going to go ahead, drag this back out, And I'm just going to make it, I don't want the box to be too big. So I'm going to tighten it up on the side. So I'm just using these side controllers for scaling like that. Okay, something like that. I'm going to go on this side. Yeah, on the back here, I'm going to drag this one in a little bit like that. Okay, and some of the other controllers that are going to be important are this cross here will translate the box. Okay, so if I click on it and I drag, it stays in the same plane. Okay, but you drag it around. So I'm just going to put that back where it was, somewhere around here like that. And you also have this little controller on the top here. Okay, so it's like a little pyramid almost, but if you drag that down, you'll see that I can cut off part of the building, just like that. So now I can see inside, and that's kind of what we're after. If I lift this back up, there's a couple ways you can do this. There's also this other little triangle thing here, and if I click on that, that lifts or lowers the clip box. So I'm going to lift that up, just like that, and you can see that I'm cutting off the ceiling here too. Now, if I'm here at this point and I just want to cut off the ceiling, I can do that. And I can also lower the top of the box like this. But you say, hey, where's the bottom part? Well, you can switch what it hides, because right now it's hiding what is outside of the box. But if I take the properties box here, where it says clipping box, hide outside, I can hide what's on the inside, obscure the inside. And when I do that now, you'll see that, okay, I can still see what is inside. Okay, but I've just hidden what's there. So let me just here. Oh, sorry. So let's do that again. I chose the wrong one. It's not obscure. I got to hide the inside. There we go. There it is. Hide the inside, not obscure. So I've got the box. I can see the point cloud and I can see inside, but this box is in the way and it's kind of annoying. So I don't want it there. Just let me see if it's high enough. Yeah, I guess I got enough of the door. I could try to lift this a little bit more. Let's see what happens if I go too much. No, I've cut everything off. I just want to get down where drop, something like that. And I think that would be, yeah, well, there's still little points there. So something like this, I think that would be good enough for what we're doing here. Maybe there's this other beam. Let me see if I can get a little bit lower. Maybe I don't want that beam in the way. I'm going to drop that tiny bit more. Is that too much? Oh, now I went too low. So let me go up a bit more. There we go. Go down. Sometimes it snaps to different locations, so you just got to be careful here. It can be a little bit tricky, but I'm good with that. All right, so now I got this box here. I want to get rid of it, and for that, we want to go to the clip box manager here. Okay, so this guy right up here, I'm going to click on that, and it says visible. Well, I want to uncheck that so that it becomes non-visible. Close the manager, and there you go. Okay, Bob's your uncle. You got everything that you need. This is going to be so much easier to navigate now because we don't have to go hunting for things through the ceiling and that sort of thing. And so, you know, this preparation thing is just going to make it a lot easier for you. Okay, well, that's good. That's pretty much where we are now. So let's get into marking the bullet trajectories. And for that, what we're going to need to do is we could mark this a couple of ways. So one is just manual marking. So I gave the example before where you don't have a rod and you just want to go in and, you know, maybe just mark a point on the wall and then, you know, mark another point. Let's do that just on a different wall. It doesn't matter what we do or where we do it, but, you know, it could be, let's say, just for pretend, you know, we can choose one of these outlets or something. So we're going to be going to the Power Tools menu now, okay? So we've been on Point Cloud. We're going to switch over to Power Tools, and there's this one here. It says Trajectory, okay? So I'm going to click on it, and you see that I've got this menu that's popped up, and my mouse has changed to actually just mark a point on the Point Cloud, and that's what it's going to snap to. It's going to select one of those points. So when you're marking the trajectory, you're going to start with marking where the bullet came or went to, and then where it came from. Okay, so let's say it impacted this wall, okay, but it came from somewhere inside the room. So I'm going to mark where it went to first. So let's say I'm just going to click on a point here. Okay, something like that. And then I'm going to go, where did it come from? So maybe it came from back towards this table. So I'm going to click here right now, just anywhere. Okay, so we'll be able to adjust this right now, and that's what I'll walk you through. So here at the point where I've marked where it came where it went to, I've got this plane here. Okay, so this is your reference plane, and all your measurements are basically with reference to this plane. And you'll see that it's sort of aligned with this wall, but by default, it aligns with, you know, that axis that we aligned it to. So had this been on a 45-degree angle, the point cloud wasn't aligned properly, this plane would still be aligned with the axis. So it's important that this plane is aligned with this wall. So one way that I can do that is I can take this controller and snap to the wall. Okay, so as I'm moving here, I'm snapping to the wall, and you'll see that it's kind of shifting a little bit, right? So I can snap to this wall, and now this point is snapping to a point here. Now here, this right now you can see is on the little, it looks like it's a telephone outlet thing. So I'm going to snap this to the wall like that. Okay, now this is on the wall, and this point is on the wall. If I had this further back and I snapped to the wall, this plane would be on an angle. So you have to keep in mind always, where is this plane and what is it aligned to? Okay, so please keep that in mind. Now, there's some controllers here. So I was grabbing this pentagon thing here, and I can just drag it around so I can move it to different places as necessary. So let's say I put it up on the wall here, right? And then I've got this little arrow, and that arrow will allow me to go up and down, much like on the clip box. If I click on that, I can just shift it up and down. If I try to drag side to side, it won't do that. So what else can I control? Well, I need to control where it came from. So I'm going to move back here, and you can see that I have similar controllers here. So I can take this controller now. I can drag it anywhere that I want. Okay, I have the little up controller. So if I have a position set, but I want to move it up and down, then I can just do that. I can move it up and down. I have another controller here. This affects the rotation around the plane. So if I zoom out a bit and I click this controller, I can now, you know, rotate around. So I'm just kind of swinging it around the point where the reference plane is. I can move the whole trajectory with this plus, this little cross here or whatever. Okay, now I've kind of moved it out of place. Let me Control Z and undo that. And I've got other controllers here. This one here will extend along the trajectory, right? And this one here will kind of do the same thing. It'll move it along the trajectory. Okay, but I want this thing stuck to the wall over here, which I'm happy with. I've aligned it to the wall by taking this point, okay, and snapping it to the wall kind of thing. And that's okay. And yeah, I just need to take this, let's say I align it to the desk over here, and maybe somebody was standing along here and they fired, but maybe this is a little bit too low. Let me go up a bit so we have a little bit of a downward shot. And maybe they weren't that close to the table. Maybe it came from somewhere over here. Okay, so now we've got the trajectory in place, and we've done this completely manually. Okay, we haven't really used any automated tools. But when I click on this now, you'll see that I have my angle convention, and it says that the azimuth is 112.88 and the inclination is 80.39. Okay, so you have to interpret that and say, okay, well, what does that mean actually? So, you know, it's going from 0 to 180. So let's have a look. Let's go to an extreme value. If I go higher, okay, you'll see that this is now at a downward angle of 63.79. Okay, so this is the shot's going down. If I go this way, where I put it down to the ground, okay, you'll see that it's at 103.88. Okay, so there's some different things happening here, and you have to be able to interpret this, okay, properly. So sometimes, and for different angles, certain numbers can mean different things to different people. So my angle convention here, I can go negative 90 to positive 90. So if I click on that and I look at this, now I got a negative angle downwards. Okay, so my vertical angle is going down by negative 13.31. Sometimes that's a little bit more intuitive. Okay, and then my azimuth is 22.8. So if I look at this from here, okay, it's 22.8 degrees. Now, if I'm not sure about that, I can take this controller, I can rotate it around like this. Okay, and I got 66.5, you see, and if I go the other way, okay, now I'm at negative 66. So you have to keep looking at what it is that you've got and make sure that you interpret the directions, whether it's up or down or whether it's left or right from a wall. And I'll leave that with you. But for now, let's say I use the negative 90 and positive 90 for those angles. And I'm just going to move this up a tiny bit more so I have a downward angle, let's say of negative 7. Okay, I'm not too interested in what all those angles mean and everything else. I'm good with that. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, you have some properties here that you can change. Okay, so there's this cone that's here. All right, so this is your trajectory cone, and it's basically like an uncertainty. And different people can use different things under different scenarios. But if I go to the trajectory cone over here, you'll see that it's now set to 5 and 5. But let's say that maybe the vertical wasn't as certain as the horizontal, or vice versa. Maybe I know how tall the person was and I know where they shot from, but maybe I'm not all that certain on the left and right position. So you can change that, so you can say, well, I'm okay with maybe 3 degrees in the vertical, but on the horizontal, well, I'm not really sure. So I'm a little bit uncertain here, so I can go wider. So you can change the uncertainty of this particular trajectory. Okay, just by changing the trajectory cone here. And there's also a color and there's a transparency, and you can slide this and kind of get different things depending on the look of what you need. And in fact, you can actually just shut it off completely. So if you just want to work with the trajectory rod, you definitely can. Now, the trajectory line itself, you can do some things with it also, like in terms of color, in terms of different things. So maybe I want it to be, I don't know, a brighter color. I can do that. It gives me an arrow size and it gives me a line thickness. So right now it's like a hairline thickness, but if this was a 1/4 inch trajectory rod, or maybe it was a 9mm bullet or something like that. So you can change this. Okay. So I can go 0.009, something like that. Okay. And then we could add a little bit of thickness to that. Oh, why is it not showing? Hold on a second. Okay. That's too big. That's in centimeters. I think that's what's going on. So let me go back to 1. Okay. And then, you can see here that, it's looking pretty good. I can see that even if I'm farther away, or even if I'm close up. And you can adjust this, play with it, get what you need for whatever scenario you're working in. Okay, so I'll stick with just the line here. Let me click on that, and maybe we want to get the trajectory cone back just for fun. Go back here like that and turn that back on. Okay, perfect. So that's manual placement, and I've shown you some of the controllers and such on how to do that. But let's move into some of the semi-automatic tools that we can use for marking the trajectory. So I'm just going to delete that trajectory. I don't want it anymore. And we're going to move into this door here. So I've got the trajectory spheres that are located on this rod. Now, you don't need the spheres, okay? You can work with just the trajectory rods if you want, and then just mark it that way. You can mark it manually. There's even some tools that will help you, mark the rods or whatever. I found that the simplest thing to do is just to use the trajectory spheres, and they come in some different sizes. The standard one, or the one that's probably the most popular, it's sold from a company in California called Koppa Targets, Koppa. It's an 80mm sphere. Okay, now these ones here, I'll have to look to see what size these are, but these ones look like they're the 50mm. So I have a set that's a little bit smaller, and they're nice because you can pack more inside of a bag or something like that. So the process here is going to be where we need to mark these spheres, create little spheres on here, and then the trajectory will snap to the spheres. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So let's go ahead and mark those spheres. And in order to do that, what we want is our snaps. Okay. So I went to the home tab. It's on different sections here, or like different tabs. You can still see the snaps. But if you click down on this little arrow, you'll see that you have a number of options here. Okay. So some of them are highlighted and some of them aren't. But the one that we want for sure is this sphere snap. So it looks like it's not on right now. So if we click on that, you can see that you get a number of different sizes here. So the one that I'm going to use is the 55mm. Actually, that's the size that I believe I was using here, 55mm. So there's an 80 here, which is a more standard size, and you can even do manual. So if you pick a few points on the sphere, it'll try to figure out what the size is going to be. But I know that these ones are very close to 55. I'm going to click on that. And now it'll snap to those spheres. So I click on here. It's hard to see, but it actually made a sphere there. Okay, so I'm going to do another one here. Made a sphere there. Okay, made one here, and we're going to do one here. Okay, so now I've got my spheres in place. Now, I will say this, sometimes, depending on the density of the scan for these particular spheres, you may want to check the position of the sphere, or you may want to actually mark it 2 or 3 or 4 times, okay? So if I click on the sphere, I just hit escape, by the way, to get out of that tool picking mode. When I click on a sphere, you'll see that I've got the XYZ coordinates for that particular sphere, so any one that I pick, okay, these will come up. And what I can do is I can look at the radius, but I can also look at its position. So if I click on it, I can delete it and then mark it again, click on it, mark it again, and I can record these numbers and then maybe take an average if they're shifting. Now, normally, if you have a good scan, it's working quite well, but sometimes you have to be careful. It can shift by, just fractions of a millimeter or something like that, and you just want to make sure you get the most precise value for this particular position. And you can adjust these positions. So if I type something in here, like, 1.4, you'll see that it jumps out of place, okay? So you can make some very fine adjustments to those spheres. But let's say for now, you've got those spheres in place, they're looking really good for you, and now you want to get into the trajectory marking. So we're going to go back to this trajectory tool, like that, and it's going to snap to the point cloud, but it's also going to snap to the center of the sphere, okay? So when I bring my mouse close here, you see it, there's like a little circle that lands in the middle of the sphere. So we're going to mark this in the same way as we did the trajectory that was on the wall, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the center here, okay, of the sphere. And you see I've got this plane now, and I'm going to click back here on this particular sphere, and I'm going to click on that one. So now I've got a trajectory set up here. Let's do it again for this guy over here. I'm going to click on trajectory, and this guy over here, I'm going to click there, and I'm going to click on the center of this sphere. So now I've got another trajectory set up. Now, the thing here is these are very small, so they're not looking really impressive or whatever. But some things to note is that this plane here, that it was really important, okay? So I need to be able to align this to something. And by default, it aligns to just my axis. So if I zoom out, okay, that plane is aligned to the main axis over here. Now, this main axis is a little small. It's a little bit hard to see. Let me make that a little bit larger. If I go to my Enviro tab, ground, and I've got to go to my, oh boy, where is it? My axis thickness. I'm just going to increase that a bit. There it is. So now you can really see where the 000 lands in that particular corner. If I zoom in, so these planes here are now aligned to this axis right here by default. So unless I change them. Okay, so let me get out of here. And I'm going to go back to this trajectory, and we're going to fix this up a bit, okay? We're going to make some changes here. If I click on it, I still got all the controllers like before. Now, because this is aligned to the two spheres, I don't want to start messing around with these controllers and move it out of place. Okay, what I want to do is I just want to extend this. Okay, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this further back into the room, maybe somewhere towards the center of the room like this, okay? So it's like I've got one, and I'll do the same thing with the other. I'm going to get in here, click on the trajectory, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to move it further back. So let me go back here, get it out, and oh, look at that. They cross at a certain point. So that's pretty interesting. Good. And on both of these now, I did shut off the trajectory cone, but I could turn those back on if I wanted. I'll leave them off for the time being. It's just easier to work with when we're talking about these planes here. So this plane, I may want to align it to something different than the axis. Now, I did align it to this. I did remember the point cloud. I aligned it to this axis, so it should be relatively close. But if I really want to be certain, I want this plane maybe aligned to my north wall, or I want the plane aligned to the door. So I could do that too. I could just say, hey, just align it to the door. So for example, this plane here of the door, I can click on the plane like this, and it says manually align impact plane, auto align impact plane. So there's some different options in auto align extend to plane. So let me show you this auto align extend to plane. If I click on this, what it's going to want me to do is pick 3 points. So on the plane. So if I click on 1, and then I click on 2, and I click on 3, okay, what it does is it extends the trajectory and it aligns the plane to the door. So basically those 3 points that I picked, this is now aligned. And you'll see that the shape has changed as well. So this circle tells you that it has been auto-aligned to a wall or to some other object, okay? But I can choose any wall or anything like that. So let me undo that for a second, and let me do it one more time. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to AutoAlign Extend to Plane. Let's say if I picked this particular plane and I click 1, 2, 3. Okay, now what it did was it extended it to that wall, but my horizontal and vertical reference are now based on this particular wall. Okay, so usually you use this to the immediate wall where the trajectory is going to intersect with. Okay, but if I grab it and I move it back to here, you'll see that it changed back because I moved it. Okay, it's no longer auto aligned, but everything is back in place. So there's different things that you can do, and I can even extend this just like I did before. So if I click on this trajectory, okay, I've got the other controller here, so I can take this and I can move this forward to the plane like that. Okay, there's different things that you can do. So if I want to extend this back to this particular door, I can go to the AutoAlign impact plane. Okay, and I'm going to go, sorry, I got to extend it to the plane. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and it goes there. Now, if I just want it aligned but not extended, then I would use the AutoAlign to impact plane. Okay, so there's different things that you can do. Now, note that when you do it this way, it takes both the vertical and the horizontal angle of this particular wall. But for example, here, I'm looking at, I can align this plane, let's say, to a wall, but I got to be careful that, let's say, for example, on a windshield, if I did that same point picking, it would change the angle, the vertical angle of that plane, and it would change the vertical angle of my reading. And if that's not what I wanted, if I wanted a plumb line to gravity, then I want to keep it as a square here, okay? I don't want to make it into a circle because this is now aligning vertically. But if I know that this wall is more or less vertical, then that's fine. So apologize for all the caveats here, but there's just a lot of little details when it comes to the trajectories that you have to be aware of. Now, one thing that's important here is that if I align this particular trajectory here and I align this trajectory to this plane, there could be some small differences. And let's say, for example, this was a car body and all of a sudden you had, curved surfaces and things like that. It's very difficult to align everything to the same plane. And so the reading that I'd have here may be slightly different than the reading I have here, and they're independent of each other because all of my measurements on this trajectory are relative to this reference plane. So if this reference plane and this reference plane, okay, are doing two different things. So if I've got one here, and let's say this little controller here, I move it like that, on an angle, and then this one here is snapping to something else or whatever. Now, these two here are basically independent of one another. They're not reading the same thing. Okay, so there's a little trick for putting them in a common reference plane, basically a horizontal plane. And let's go back to this wall here because I said originally I wanted to align everything to this wall. So an easy way to do that is to create some kind of a reference object along this wall. And what I'm going to do is just create a point or a line, excuse me. So I'm just going to draw a line. So if you go up into the home or you get like draw, you'll see that you got this line tool up here. So if I click on the line tool, if I pick any 2 points along this wall, it's going to create a line. So if I pick a point here and I pick a point here, I've got this line now. So this line has been aligned with this particular plane, but I can borrow this line to these and snap them to these reference planes and align the reference plane to the same direction. And in that case, they both are in the same reference plane. So let me show you what I mean. If I take this and I copy, so I'm going to hit Control C and then Control V. Okay, I've got a copy here, and I'm going to see if I can click on it around here, and I'm going to snap this center point here. So this little crosshair that's here to the center of the sphere like that. So now this line and the reference plane are sort of at the same point, the same origin point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the reference plane and this little rotation point. If I go onto the line, it's going to align. It's going to snap to the line. So anywhere I go here, it's going to snap to the line. Now I have to be careful it doesn't snap to the point cloud behind it. So I'm just going to snap to the line like that. And let me just check, make sure. So I can see it looks like the plane is very well aligned, okay, to that line. So that means that the direction of this plane and the direction of the point that was here, the line that was on the wall, are identical, okay? I've borrowed from here and I put it here. So I'm going to take this line, And I'm going to move it over here now, like that, snap it there. I'm going to take this reference plane, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to take this, and maybe the line is, see how it comes over here? There's a little bit of a shift between those two planes. So I'm going to take this, snap it to here, to this line, make sure that it aligns properly on the line. And yeah, so basically this plane and this plane are now both aligned, okay, to the same reference plane, which is this wall. Okay, and that's what you need to do in order to make it the same system. And you can imagine if you're going around a car and you have shots all the way around the car, they all have a different reference plane. But if you take a line through the center of the car or some external reference and you say, okay, this is my direction, I'm calling this my north or my zero or whatever, and you make it common to all of them, then it's much easier for people to understand as opposed to dealing with all these, 15 or 5 or 7 independent shots. Okay, so this little technique where you're taking the line, you borrow from the line or borrow from a plane and then use it for all the rest means that they're all in the common reference plane. Okay, so that's that there. What else do I want to get to? Well, there are a number of other little things you can do. I mean, I talked about the trajectory cones and such, and I can show the cone. I can turn that back on. Okay, so maybe I want to go to 2 and 2. Maybe I have a lot of confidence in this one, or I have less uncertainty, so I can turn that on. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of other things you can do, but I don't want to make this overly lengthy here. But these would be the basics. Okay, so when you click on it, you read off your azimuth and inclination. And again, if you're not aware or if it's just not making sense, move them around. Okay, just take the little controller here, move it up like that and say, okay, what does that mean? Oh, it's downward. I got a negative number here. It's negative 22. I'm using a negative 90 to positive 90 convention, and I've got a negative 18 angle. So what does that mean? Oh, negative 18. Well, I think negative 18, this would be like 0, and to the left is negative 18. So this shot is fired from left to right, and that would be a negative 18. Okay, and I can verify that by going over this way like that, and now I've got a positive 20. That makes sense. So I'm going to undo that again, get it back in place. So always look at your numbers, make sure they make sense, right? And that's good. Let me undo one more. Otherwise, there are other things you can do. So for example, there's a report here, and if you click on that, what it'll do is it'll start to take automatic previews and screenshots for the different trajectories. And it makes this little report here. So if I flip through these, right, I got this, I got that. It gives me my origin. It gives me a number of my numbers and things like that. Okay, there we go. There's some more screenshots, and there you go. And this can be exported as a PDF. So you click on the PDF, you can get it out. You can see drawn by, drawn date. So you have some things that you can place in here for the report. And if you took this as a PDF and you kind of spit it out into a different editor, like Adobe Editor or whatever it's called for editing PDFs, you can actually replace these images and do some different things here, okay? So, but if you just need the numbers, you can copy these, bring them into Word even, and create your own report. But that is pretty much the basics of working with the trajectories. There are other things that you can do, some pretty cool things on the trajectories, like you can show protractors and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of things there. I'm not going to get into some of that. I'll leave it with this. I'm trying to think if there's something else that I want to show you. But yeah, that's the basics, and hopefully that'll help you get started with the bullet trajectories. But remember, you got to import the point cloud. You got to align the point cloud. You got to establish some kind of a reference plane that your trajectories are going to be common to. And then when you set up the trajectories, remember that you always click where it went to first, okay? So basically like the second point of impact, and then go back to where the bullet came from, and that will set up your plane. And you have all these controllers that you can adjust the trajectories with and basically come up with a final report when you click on it there. Okay, hopefully that's enough to get you started, and play with the tools, learn, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.